Chris and Chris Talk Movies.
Hello, and welcome back to the podcast. My name is Chris Ferry, and of course, this is my co-host.
My name is Chris Huddleston.
And today, we are both very excited to be talking to you about the Christmas horror film, Krampus.
It's the most wonderful time of the year, with the kids jingle bells.
Merry Christmas!
Looks like Martha Stewart threw up in here.
This is delicious, honey.
A little dry.
Well, mine's delicious.
Mine's dry.
Do you want to trade?
It's
Christmas. It's Christmas. It's Christmas.
with those holiday greetings and gifts.
How we were going to survive Christmas with 12 people stuck in a house with no heat and no electricity.
Or food.
There's plenty of leftovers, Howard.
Beer it is.
It's the weirdest thing. There's no cars, no people.
How long can this keep up?
We heard something on the roof.
The hell's this?
Saint Nicholas is not coming this year. Instead, a much darker, ancient spirit.
Those are hooves. Elk or goat?
What kind of goat walks on its hind legs?
His name is Krampus. He and his helpers did not come to give, but to take.
Everybody, hold on to each other.
He is the shadow of Saint Nicholas.
It's Christmas. Nothing bad's gonna happen on Christmas.
Do you have a synopsis for us, Mr. Huddleston?
I do. Krampus is a 2015 film directed by Michael Dougherty. It stars Adam Scott, Toni Collette, David Koechner, Allison Tolman, MJ Anthony, some other people. And the very to the point synopsis from IMDb is: a boy who has had a bad Christmas accidentally summons a festive demon to his family home.
Yeah, okay.
So this was a first time watch for both of us, but what did you think of this?
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's got good performances in it. I mean, good performers. Toni Collette, Adam Scott, all do a good job. All the adults do a good job. Everybody, the kids too, everybody really hands in a decent performance. The script is a little hard to parse. It's, it's contrived. They're like, we want to make a Christmas horror movie about a Christmas demon, so we need to cook up some way to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't feel like anything other than that. In fact, everybody in the family, it opens with this sort of brutal, kind of Black Friday mob rushing a store to buy Christmas gifts and punching each other and being sort of the worst of humanity.
Mm-hmm.
And then we meet all of the different members of the family. Dad, who's a workaholic, and mom, who's got her own issues. I mean, the kids' parents are pretty decent folks, but
Mm-hmm.
Christmas is just kind of this thing. Her sisters and her family is coming over, and they're obnoxious and have obnoxious kids, and we spend a lot of time establishing that nobody really has the spirit of Christmas. And it's just this little boy who at his grandmother's insistence, keeps writing a letter to Santa. But after the sort of Christmas Eve, or not even Christmas Eve, they have dinner the night that they arrive, his cousin snatches it from him and sort of obnoxiously reads it at the table. And nobody stops her. I'm like, will somebody parent? Like, that's not, you don't read. You know what I mean? You don't snatch somebody else's letter and read it like that at the table. It doesn't matter what it says. That's and if it wasn't the girl's father or mother, then it should have been, the kid's father, their aunt and uncle being like, stop. Mm-hmm. But nobody does anything. And of course, the letter contains sort of embarrassing truths, nothing too embarrassing. It's basically illustrates that the kid loves his family, and his Christmas wishes aren't for toys, but for that, everybody to have a little better time of it in the upcoming year. But he's so hurt by this betrayal that he goes upstairs and he tears up the letter and throws it out the window, and it gets whooshed up into the air, and then dark clouds form. And I suppose that's what summons this Christmas demon. Overall, the tone of the thing, I haven't seen Gremlins in a long time, but what kept coming
about Gremlins a lot
was Gremlins because some of it's supposed to be cute, some of it's supposed to be funny, some of it's supposed to be scary, and by the end, I think it's supposed to be this sort of harrowing. They set up their Scrooge is on TV, like the original, one of the early, not Scrooged, but Ebenezer Scrooge is saying,
the black and white one.
Yes, after he wakes up, he's saying, "Oh, I've been given another chance. It's still not too late." And so then, spoiler, we do spoil these things if you haven't already figured that out. So, and we'll spoil it for you. Everybody dies. And at the end, he wakes up and everyone's fine, but he finds the little Krampus bell or whatever he gets in his stocking or his gift. So it sets up this kind of like, oh, it was all just a horrible dream, or it was a warning, or there are these sort of gestures at it meaning something, but nothing else in the movie holds that up. It was funny in a couple of places. I think it, you know what I think? I think it felt like it was aimed at a young teen audience. Like this could be a movie that the whole family goes to. Maybe not if your kids were 6 or 7, but if your kids were, 12, 13, 14 and up, the ages of the kids in the movie, that it wouldn't be too scary for everybody. That's what it felt like it was aimed at for me. Mm-hmm. And so I didn't think it was hilarious, and I didn't think it was terrifying, and I didn't think it was particularly memorable either. What did you think?
So I was a little bit the opposite of you with my expectations. I had heard a lot of good things about this, just kind of in general. So I thought, maybe this would be really good. 100% what you said, they were trying to be Gremlins, I felt. And I actually watched Gremlins last Christmas, so I have, a pretty good memory of it. Gremlins is, as you were saying, is a kind of a family-friendly Christmas comedy horror movie. And, there aren't a lot of, I was kind of struggling to think of other films that are in that category. So it's sort of this unique thing that they were going for. Gremlins is, there's a little bit kind of dark stuff in it, but overall it's pretty lighthearted. And as you said, Gremlins, other than small children, nobody's going to be scared by Gremlins. And, the Gremlins themselves are funny, and all of that. The tone felt a lot darker. Like you said, everybody dies basically in this. And, you're having kids getting snatched away, which you're not really sure exactly what happens to them, snatched to their deaths and everything.
Drop a pin,
And
because I want to come back to that when you finish.
okay. And also another thing that was you talked about with the dinner table note snatching, that no one was parenting. There's a lot of non-parenting in this. There's one scene where, so they know they're under attack. They don't really know by what, and they've boarded the house up and everything. And there are two girls, like middle school age girls, I guess, who go upstairs to go to the bathroom, and they encounter these creatures up there and are screaming. And then we cut to downstairs, and it's the parents, and they hear these girls screaming. And I'm not a parent, but I kind of assume in that situation, or even just an adult where there are children around, that you're going to run to the screaming, but instead they creep up the stairs. They're scared of what they're going to see. That just didn't feel like real parents to me. Yeah,
they take a while. There's this is their first reaction.
Yeah.
They look at each other, and then we should go check. Yes, these are your children. I mean, especially if you know, as they do at this point, that there's danger about. They've boarded up the doors and windows, right? So, and this is not a scream of like, a spider. This is a blood-curdling scream of terror. You would break down doors getting to your child. And just while we're on that point, so one teenage daughter, the first casualty, is a teenage daughter that goes out to her boyfriend's who lives in the neighborhood. And they say, come back in an hour. They let her go out in a blizzard, but I don't think they realize how sort of supernatural this blizzard is yet, because nobody's been out in it. All the power's out. But when they go out later, it's like sub-zero. It's like, cripplingly cold. But they don't really realize, I don't think they realize the danger that's going on. So an hour passes, 2 hours pass, it gets dark, and other people, her little brother, are saying like, she's not back yet, Oh, she's probably just over whatever this house. Look, not on a night like that would you, when you can't call the other house. So eventually the two men of the house, her father and her uncle, go out looking for her, and then realize that stuff is very, very amiss. I don't think they realize it's supernatural yet, but they think, wow, this is something's crazy is going on here. And then something grabs the uncle in the snow, and then they realize there is something crazy, supernatural going on. But then there's a kid that gets snatched up the chimney, right? Sort of a chain comes down with a gingerbread man and a hook on it, and the kid takes a bite of the gingerbread, and the gingerbread's a little animated guy, is angry, like, hey, what are you doing? And grabs him and wraps the chain around him, and they thank goodness the hook doesn't impale him. But they sort of suck him up the chimney, and their parents grab him, and they're trying to pull him back down, and they lose, and his shoe comes off, and up the chimney he goes. And then there's a couple of beats where they're just like, the kid's father goes, I'm going to go up on the roof and get him. And everybody else goes, no, you can't do that. Come on. If your kid just got sucked up the chimney, there's in a time and time again, as the kids are getting picked off, everyone's like, oh, we got to ride this out. We got to stay put. And then when things calm down, we'll go look for them. I'm like, an impossibly animated demonic gingerbread man just snatched your kid with a giant rusty hook up the chimney. You're not gonna, what do you think they're doing, having tea? Like, come on, that's terrifying. It just defies human logic. Anyway,
and they're not particularly, you see them for a couple of minutes being upset that their kids are gone, but it's just sort of like, then on to the, and I get, in a way, you can't just have the rest of the movie being them like in shock or whatever, but Yeah, they just do not act like real people at all in this. And then
Again, but I
the
just want
things.
to underline the performances
Okay.
moment to moment are fine. It's just that the overall arc of the thing doesn't describe how actual human beings would act.
Right.
You know, I mean, the scene then says the husband and wife have a testy exchange, but a husband and wife would not have a testy exchange after the loss of their child. They'd have something appropriate to that, inciting event. That's all we're saying.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I would say that the two strengths of this movie, it looks really great. All of the snow scenes and all of that look fantastic. And the creature designs are really great.
I agree.
But again, that's where I would get into my criticism of this movie. The creature designs are genuinely frightening. I felt there are these elves that come and bust in their windows, and they're just wearing these weird masks, and that was really, really creepy.
Almost little Harlequin masks. Yeah.
Yeah. But then you have that, and you have the Krampus itself looks really great, and is pretty scary. And you have these various there's is it a Jack in the Box or something that has like it's mouth opens up almost like the Predator or something, and that's really creepy.
It's wearing a mask too, but at the chin it sort of splits so its mouth can get big enough to swallow a kid.
And it has all these sharp teeth.
There's one point at which you see the sort of boots of one of the twins kind of disappearing down its maw, which I thought was upsetting. It's not gross. It's not like it bites people in half. But still, if you're a kid and you're watching this giant worm thing swallow a kid, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. So you have all of that, but then you also have these gingerbread men. So there's a scene in the kitchen with David Koechner, and he's being attacked by these these computer generated gingerbread men, who look like they're from Shrek, and he's shooting them with his shotgun and everything. And this is supposed to, the movie thinks this is really funny, and it's not really, but it's tonally, it's very different from these other scary creatures and people dying. Like they're
right.
They're
right.
So it's, I don't know. And you have these, again, even watching it 40 years after it was released or whatever, Gremlins is still pretty funny. I mean, there's definitely things, it's silly, but there's definitely funny aspects to it. Whereas this, you have all of these great, they're great dramatic actors, but also great comedic actors. Toni Collette has kind of moved a little more into drama, but, she's done a lot of great comedic stuff. And Adam Scott is funny, and David Koechner is from Anchorman. And these, so you have all of these really good comedic actors, but it's not funny. I didn't feel, they're not really given much material to work with that's funny. And David Koechner is playing another thing where it's, rip off basically. He's Cousin Eddie from National Lampoon's Christmas, where he's it's Adam Scott. They're the wealthy family in this beautiful house, and then it's their redneck cousins.
Right. Pull up
so it's
like,
okay,
he's got guns, and then you're supposed to be like, now we're actually kind of glad that the red state guy brought his guns, and it's just sort of very ham-handed.
And all this material was done so much better in National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation,
Yes. And I don't know. I kept feeling like the movie kind of wanted to have it both ways. It wanted to be scary, a scary Christmas movie, but it wanted everybody to be having a grand old time. And you're like, well, in some ways, those are kind of opposite. I mean, Raimi pulls it off because they're scary movies laced with comedy. Like I would call his stuff horror, but it definitely, if there's a horror comedy genre, that's a subset of horror, not a subset of comedy. And and it is a very specific roller coaster ride that anchors itself in the world of horror. And this feels like it really wants to anchor itself in the world of Christmas movie, but get to have its horror cake and eat it too. You know what I mean? Like the elves do wear masks.
Yeah.
And they have sort of giggly, voices like that, so there's a lot of kind of minions to it. And you're like, what is happening? And the animated gingerbread men are like, what?
Like from a different film, basically.
Krampus, like they're from Shrek. And you're like, well, what are they doing here? Like, what's the math here? Krampus is a Santa, and he's got magical evil helpers, and he's got magical, like, does Santa Claus have magic snowman and magic gingerbread man? I guess he has reindeer. I don't know.
Reindeer.
It doesn't.
He has elves. I mean,
it doesn't add up. I know you're not supposed to. Defenders of this movie be like, you're thinking about it too hard. I get it. I mean, I understand. This wasn't supposed to be, a meditation on anything. But it does throw in some stuff like, well, when you stop and think about it, collectively, haven't we all kind of lost the spirit? I'm like, oh, shut up. Don't preach to me. And you know what I mean? It feels like they're trying to sneak some messages in there. And I'm like, well, A, you're not committing to it. And B, this is not the film for that.
Right. And along those lines, and they explain it after a while, but, not being that well versed in the legend or whatever of Krampus, other than just knowing it's like bad kids or whatever, he goes after them. And, for a good portion of the movie, I'm thinking, okay, they allude to that there's marital problems with the mom and dad or whatever. And the kid in the beginning, when it's the Black Friday sale or whatever, he gets into a fight with another kid or whatever. But nobody seems to be that bad. It's not like this little boy isn't a bad kid at all. So then they explain it that it's like, well, it's not about being good or bad. It's what's, in your heart. And if you don't have the spirit of Christmas anymore or whatever, it's just like, this seems like a very thin,
right. Because there's this one kid that has it. No, but literally nobody else has it. Are we supposed to understand he's the last straw? But then there's a confusing thing with the grandmother. She's like, oh, everybody sit down. I know what this is. And when she was a little girl, the kid's age, something similar happened to her. And there's an animated sequence.
Which is really well done.
It's really well done, but I'm just kind of like, what do we? So is this a curse that has now passed down from grandmother? Yeah. This vengeance on the it doesn't seem to be. Krampus, she sort of sacrifices herself. She wants to face him, but not necessarily. It doesn't seem like she's doing that to slow him down or to help save the others. You know what I mean? And he does kill her, but it doesn't seem like anything's coming full circle. He's just like, oh, I was going to get to you eventually, but you know what I mean? There doesn't seem to be any architecture to.
And her kind of backstory was strange because, like you said, it was like, okay, is this supposed to be like a curse passed down? But with her, it was just her parents weren't happy anymore in their marriage, I guess. And like, so again, it seemed very, a thin premise to set this whole thing up, because it's not like you feel as if anyone should be punished or anything. Right. You know what I mean?
But having said
it's not like you're like, yeah, these people are going to get punished by the evil,
right?
Because they're pretty, even the redneck family is not that bad.
I know you think, well, they didn't deserve this. I mean,
yeah.
They're obnoxious. I wouldn't want to have them to dinner, but I don't want them all to die by, demons.
And the
Um,
the main family, the little boy and his sister and the parents and the grandmother, all are
yeah.
very sweet.
The sister's kind of a wise mouth teen. I mean,
Yeah.
she's got an attitude, but not as bad as some 80s movies,
Sure.
The eye rolling stuff, like, don't talk to your mother that way, kid. Come on. That kind of thing. Um, and then when she's under the truck hiding, I thought nice performance from her. Like, you don't want her to die. We don't often see people die. Like, this isn't a movie in which people are butchered. You do see that sort of big Jack in the Box worm thing sort of swallowing the ankles and boots of a kid, but it's not like it's not chomping. Nobody gets dismembered. The fat kid doesn't get fish hooked. They sort of wrap him up with the chain and pull him up. People, there's something sort of tunneling under the snow that grabs people and pulls them under. But the uncle comes up and he's got bite marks in his leg, but there isn't any gore in this.
No.
I just want to. So I've been grousing about it for a while, but I want to go on the record and say I didn't hate this. I don't know that I'll ever watch it again, but I didn't find myself wanting to turn it off. I didn't find myself looking at my phone.
No, I was never bored. I never felt bored.
I never said out loud, like, oh, come on. Or I didn't say any of this stuff to the screen. I was just kind of taking it all in. It does look really great. It looks like a Christmas movie. The set design I thought was beautiful. The creature design, I mean, I didn't care for the mask. I think they must have put the masks on them in an effort to make them less scary somehow. Because even as sort of scary toys or scary dolls go, these aren't that scary. But the Krampus design was really cool. He looks sort of like a demented Santa. And he's got, I know Krampus has a really
big
long tongue. Yeah. So there's a homage to that. And he's got kind of long, nasty fingers and these crazy big horns, but I thought, and goat legs. But I thought all of that design was fresh. I had not seen that anywhere before. And like I say, it's Adam Scott and Toni Collette. I could almost watch them do anything. So the cast is great, and the aunt comes over, the grandmother, everybody's good. It just, I don't know. It left me kind of feeling like, wow, I feel like that could have been a lot better.
Yeah, I felt exactly the same way. It kind of like you were saying, they and this, I've done this on several movies, and this is kind of unfair. It's describing the movie that you want instead of the movie that you got, which is is not really fair. But
here we go.
You what's that? What did you say? I'm sorry.
I said, but here we go.
But I'm going to do it anyway. It's, we've talked about this a lot with horror comedy or comedy horror. It's a tough balance to strike.
Yeah. And
this doesn't have enough comedy. I mean, it's just, because by the end, it's kind of sad. I mean, they're all just being pulled away and they're crying and everything. I think you would have been better off to just go full on, make it a horror movie and take the family aspect of it out, maybe have it just be two couples trapped in the house or whatever.
Right.
And just go full on horror movie with it, because the comedy stuff just doesn't work in this. It's not lighthearted enough to really feel like a comedy. You know what I mean? One thing that I was thinking, so there's a part towards the end where it's just him and it's the little boy and one of the cousins are the only ones left, and the Krampus and these other, his whatever they are, creatures that they almost looked like the the things that the sand people ride around on. They almost look like those
banthas.
But yeah. And so they're all gathered around, and he's trying to bargain with the Krampus to take him, and let bring everybody else back, blah, 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 and all that. And it like the ground opens up and it's like, I guess they're pulled into hell or whatever. I mean, that all looked really cool, but, and I might be reading too much into this, but I was thinking, this is just for what's supposed to be presumably a family friendly horror movie. This is just a little too dark. And I could almost, as I was watching it, I could almost envision people that really into this movie saying, oh, back in the 80s, we got this, this darker stuff because we were tougher or whatever, you know what I mean? But it just, I don't know. It just doesn't feel like it comes together. It needed a lot better script.
I agree with you, because at the end he wakes up and it's the sort of Scrooge moment.
Oh, and then
it was all a dream, but there's no moral. It wasn't like now you have a second chance to be a better kid. The kid's got a heart of gold, right? He had one moment where it all
and then
his parents' loveless marriage and his obnoxious cousins' torment of him and kids at school and everything else. And he finally was just like, I'm tired of keeping up this childish fantasy anymore. And for that, his entire family was murdered. And you're like, and then it's like, oh, you get a second chance. What? What's the moral?
But then we have this, that's not the final ending. The final ending is that, so they, he has the little bell or whatever, and then they all kind of look at it as if like they've remembered now that they went through this, that it wasn't really a dream. I didn't really understand that exactly. And then we zoom back out and they're in a snow globe that the Krampus has
in
collected.
Krampus's place. Yeah, right. I forgot about that.
And the Krampus has all these different, and it was just like, what was that? They're trying to do this like Twilight Zone ending, but it didn't really make any sense.
Exactly. But that's it's like this whole stitched together thing. And there are movies that feel like their whole purpose is to keep you guessing and to keep tacking away from the expected. This didn't feel like one of those movies. I think you're right. I think if it had gone for a straight up horror film set at Christmas, it could have been more successful. Or if it had gone for a Christmas family comedy where Krampus shows up and they sort of home alone, the things are less scary. Somebody gets taken, but you get him back. Do you know what I mean? Where it's more of a family romp, like the bad guys don't have any real, or, they can have metaphorical teeth, but they don't have any real teeth. And make it a family comedy where people overcome their differences. They overcome their red state, blue state, whatever. And they realize that Christmas, even though they didn't choose it to be this way this year, was a time when they all came together. I think you could have made that movie, and that could have been, and then they sit and have Christmas dinner in their kind of torn up house. Maybe have a pile of, evil elves or something on the fire. I don't know, something. You could make it dark.
Yeah.
But I think if you wanted to make it a Christmas comedy with a dark bent, there's a rich tradition of those.
Sure.
But I felt like it had one foot in each boat.
Yeah, and this snow globe thing, just they didn't do anything to set that up at all. I mean, it's just
so you
very
get a moment
tacked
of,
on.
oh, it was all a dream. Oh, wait, or was it? And then it's like, wait, so we're in snow globes?
And that could have, that could be a kind of, no pun intended, that could be a chilling ending if it's just, if they had set that up in any way at all, kind of like Cabin in the Woods, where they can't escape, from the, because there's the digital thing around them, almost have a thing like they're trying to get away, and no matter what they do, they can't get away from their neighborhood. And you're like, why can't they get away? And then at the end, it's revealed that there's a snow globe. But again, that it felt like the filmmakers were, the idea was like, you're going to get to the end and be like, oh my God, they were trapped in a snow globe all along. there's no emotional payoff with that at all. It's just like, oh, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
So I don't know. It was, like you said, not a terrible movie. It's well made and you have all these good actors and everything. But my kind of understanding was that this has become kind of somewhat of a cult classic. But
Probably because it's so cuckoo birds.
Yeah.
For all the reasons
this certainly isn't something, last Christmas and maybe the year before, I guess, we've done previous Christmas episodes. We did the original Black Christmas, which I watch like almost every Christmas now because it's such a great movie. And Anna and the Apocalypse, which I've watched, 3 or 4 times probably. And, those are movies that you can kind of put in your Christmas rotation, and watch them, if not every year, you can watch them every few years at Christmas time. But I maybe would watch this again, but not anytime soon.
I agree. I don't really I mean, if I came over to your house and we were drinking beers and you're like, I really want to watch Krampus, I wouldn't be like, no. But I would not be like, hey, let's watch Krampus.
I don't even know that it would be fun with, just sit around and have some beers. Like I say, other than, because, there's no, you can watch something like, these are actual horror movies and not, meant to be funny, but you can watch something like the Nightmare on Elm Street movies or the Friday the 13th movies and laugh at people being, murdered, right? Because it's unrealistic and stylized and all that. But this is just like these kids just being pulled up through chimneys or pulled into a creature's mouth or whatever. And you're just like, this isn't fun.
Right. No, I agree with you.
So it's kind of a bummer because this is one of these that had always been on kind of my list to watch, at Christmas time sometime. And I just kind of never got around to it. So it was kind of a bummer that it wasn't better than, because this director did a movie, it would have been a few years before this, called Trick or Treat, which is kind of an anthology that's really good and has become a cult classic over the years. So, and I think this is what he followed that film up with. So it's just kind of disappointing that it, maybe there was studio interference with this. It kind of feels like there could be some of that,
It feels like that strongly to me.
Yeah, like, you need to make it funnier here.
Yeah, and I'd be interesting to read up on this and know what happened with it, because it feels like he finished it and gave it to them, and they're like, we need to change 5 or 7 things here, and
yeah, and it's a PG-13. Only, like you said, there's not any gore in it, and there's like a couple of F words.
Yeah,
just kind of almost thrown in like, well, we got to have at least a PG-13. We don't want this to be PG, so.
But I would think that it's mostly because it's sort of upsetting to see kids getting snatched away. I mean, that kid getting eaten. Again, it's not gross. It's just upsetting. You're like, that's your cousin, man.
Yeah. For sure.
I don't know. I don't know how I would respond if a bunch of Christmas themed monsters were attacking my family, but I mean, I think shock would be a reasonable.
Yeah, you'd probably be catatonic for a while.
Be reasonable in there, but I don't know. Maybe it's just that they didn't. I don't know. I didn't. This is not the kind of movie that inspires you to think about it that much. You just
you definitely. But it's like the teenage daughter disappears, and they just kind of forget about her. You know what I mean? It's just like, well,
yeah.
Yeah, you would be going, you'd be like, okay, we went out once and we fought them, and like, okay, we're gonna have everybody secure back here, and then we're gonna go out again and look for her until the dad would just be like not stopping until he found her.
That's exactly right. That is,
but yeah, I guess you're not supposed to think about it too much and just, I don't know, but
I don't have that much else to say about it. I think we've kind of covered it.
No,
would you?
I mean, this. Not really. I mean, this is kind of 6 out of 10, I would say, you know.
Oh, I think I agree. I don't think I would recommend it, but I don't think I'd try and dissuade someone from watching it. I'd be like,
No, if you
I'm all over
haven't,
the place, you know, let me know what you think, you know.
if you're like me and, you know, this had been one that you were aware of and had just never gotten around to, you know, it's worth watching in that regard. And as I said, there aren't, you know, this is a very small genre or subset of horror, the Christmas family horror comedy. You know, there's Gremlins, and I don't know if listeners, if you can think of some other ones. I'm sure there are more that I'm just not thinking of, you know, but
you're right, it's a very specific kind of a cinematic bonbon. So, you know, at this time of year, around the holidays, sometimes you're home visiting your folks and everybody else has gone up to bed and you don't want to watch. I mean, sometimes you want to watch The Godfather, but other times you just don't feel like turning on something that you're not going to be able to turn off. You know, you're like, I'm going to open this bottle of scotch and see how far we get. You know,
I think a bottle of scotch with this, you would get kind of depressed. I mean,
yeah,
you know.
but you understand what I'm saying is
exactly.
It's popcorn fare, and it's specifically like peppermint pop. It's like it's Christmas popcorn fare. So, you know, it's not we have watched many worse movies.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And this it's not in no way is it a poorly made film, you know. It's well put together, especially visually. But you know, I guess if you've seen Gremlins 100 times and you don't want to watch that again at Christmas time, that this is an okay, alternative. There's a lot of Christmas actual horror films like Black Christmas, but yeah.
Well, I mean, it's the kind of thing too that if my daughter is into scary movies, and probably not this year, but in the coming years, if Nova were to come to me and say, "Hey, I want to watch Krampus. Will you watch Krampus with me?" I'd be okay. You know, that's something I would do with a kid of mine that was interested in seeing it and might not be such a cinematic, you know, critic.
It's definitely not scary enough that, you know, you're going to have to worry that your kid is going to have
you can't watch that
nightmares forever.
Okay, fine.
So she's into she's getting into scary stuff. So what are some things that she's watched?
Well, it isn't so much that we have watched a lot of actually scary stuff together, but she had a friend come over who is terrified of these movies, and she insisted that they watch Miss Peregrine's House for, I don't know, Weird Teens or whatever it's called.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. I've not seen it, but I know
it's an interesting movie, but there is some genuinely creepy and scary stuff in that. There really is. And Nova's friend was flipping out and Nova was gobbling it up. So that's not The Exorcist, but you know, it's intense. Kids are in danger. The monster effects are good. It's one of my favorite Samuel L. Jackson roles where he plays a monster. You know, there's a handful of movies where he plays some sort of a comic book villain or a monster, and he's the monster in this, and this is my, you know. And then there's other ones like Django where he plays he's the slave of DiCaprio, and he is what a terrific performance. He is an antagonist in that movie, but just a masterful performance. But he's very much human. And in other ones, he's some, you know, Glass. I think he's sort of a super villain in that. And there's other ones, but so we have the streaming accounts kind of locked off for at 14 or something, and Nova's 11. So nothing too crazy, but she has a real appetite for it. And I never did. Stuff like that, I was scared the bejesus out of me. I was like, no, thank you. She, in many ways, she can't get enough of it. She's like, oh, I love it. Where
That's interesting.
come from? It is really interesting. Yeah. Like there's lots of really scary stuff waiting for you, you know?
Because is Rachel into that kind of stuff?
No.
I mean, oh, okay. Yeah. So that's interesting that yeah.
Rachel likes detective stuff and murder stuff and like documentaries about cults and,
Mhm.
you know, interesting things that are anchored in truth. And I mean, we like dramas and stuff. Like she's not a real fantasy enthusiast or a science fiction enthusiast. But as dark as she gets is stuff like detective
Serial
stuff.
killer things.
Yeah, there's a murder. I mean, those can get dark. You know,
Oh, yeah.
those can be horrifying, but rarely do they rarely do they go as far as like Hannibal, where it's really into the viscera of it. It's more about trying to catch the guy and sort of knowing what he did. And there's some sort of photos of the aftermath. It's not usually the camera doesn't stay in the room with him while he's taking somebody apart, you know, because then you've tipped over into like, that's horror, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Versus thriller.
Right.
She likes thrillers.
Yeah. But with your daughter, with the Tim Burton, you know, that's a really good aesthetic, you know, because it's a lot of creepiness.
Yeah.
But
she,
you know,
really
not too scary.
Edward Scissorhands and really dug that. And I know
Yeah.
it's not a scary movie, but it's, you know, I remember feeling afraid for the Johnny Depp character, like especially The Town Rises Up, and I was like, oh, this guy didn't do anything wrong, you know, leave him alone. And really being afraid that they were gonna like burn him at the stake or something.
Oh yeah. I don't know when it hits. I think it's a Netflix thing, but the Tim Burton is doing the Wednesday Addams show. That comes out sometime. That might be over the holidays. So that'd probably be something that she'd be into.
You know what? I bet Nova would like Beetlejuice. Maybe we could watch Beetlejuice this holiday because I haven't.
Yeah.
Does that stand up?
It's been quite a while since I've seen it, but I love the early Tim Burton stuff. So
is that wildly inappropriate? I don't remember.
I think there's a little bit of, but I don't think it's too much. I think
crass language and sort of but I don't think there's anything graphic, is there?
I think, he like grabs his crotch and stuff like that, but it's not. I think it was a PG rated movie at the time.
That was one of my favorite at the time, one of my favorite performances by Michael Keaton.
And they've talked for years, and it's probably past its time, but they have talked for years about doing a second film
with him.
Yeah. And Tim, he's basically had said for years, if Tim Burton would come back, he would do it. And the thing about it is, in the makeup and everything, it would,
and he got back in terrific shape. I mean, he's, it's been what, 40 years, 30 years.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
he could pull
talked about it
with the makeup. Yeah.
Oh yeah. They've talked about it for years, but I just don't think it's ever gonna happen, and there's almost no way it would, live up to the original. But
it's an example of making a movie because you think it'll make money. You're like, oh, I bet there's an audience for that. Well, what's it about? I don't know. We'll write it. And you're kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Kind of a money grab. Like, what's the idea?
And Tim Burton, outside of the Batman movies that he did, he had Edward Scissorhands and Beetlejuice and some other films that were very original, that there was never any sequel or spinoff or anything like that. I mean, there was a Beetlejuice cartoon, but I don't think he had any involvement in that, so those were examples of really popular films that we didn't really need to know the backstory of Beetlejuice, or whatever, so, but yeah. I know we just recorded a few days ago, but have you watched anything else since we last spoke other than just this movie?
No.
Yeah, I haven't watched anything either.
Yeah, and we're tipping our hand here. It's only been a few days. No, light change, I get tired, so I want to just go to bed.
Yeah.
And I stayed
It's
up.
awful, isn't it? Isn't it funny how I think about the seasons?
Oh, I tell you, we did watch the Cabinet of Curiosities. I watched the
Oh yeah.
viewing.
So did you watch any beyond that one episode?
No, just that one episode, but
so did I
talk about it on here or not, but
yeah, so you watched the trippy one with Eric Andre, and so was it just too slow?
I think seeing where it went, it would be interesting to go back and watch it a second time. But if it's an hour-long episode, the first 40 minutes are all style and very little substance. It's the dialogue all feels like 70s style self indulgence. Like all of the characters are just kind of monologuing about where they're coming from, and they ask each other kind of ham-handed questions with a straight face. Well, surely a man like you with extrasensory perception would know something, but the spheres do not, and you mean just kind of,
It was not.
Shut up.
It was definitely the kind of dialogue that is not the way people actually, real humans actually speak.
Right. And I got a little bit of that, how self-obsessed and self-absorbed these characters are. But it just went on for 40 minutes. And then something freaky happens right at the end, and everything sort of explodes. So it's like a really long, slow burning fizzle of a fuse. And then this big, but then it leaves you, it leaves you with question marks. It doesn't even, you know what I mean? So you spend 40 minutes kind of building up to an inciting event and then credits. And you're like, what?
And we've talked about this director before. So his name's Panos Cosmatos. And I have seen Mandy, but I haven't seen his other movie, the what is it, Beyond the Black Rainbow, which you have seen that, but have not seen Mandy.
But the rainbow is slow too. I mean, it's not supposed to be a roller coaster. It's a meditation,
and I'm sure, and I love what Guillermo del Toro is doing, and they've already, I guess, said there's going to be a second season of this. I would say definitely the tone of the episodes is very different. So the other ones that I've seen are nowhere near as slow as this one is. But it's cool what he's doing, where he's just kind of turning over these stories to these filmmakers that he likes to, kind of do whatever they want.
And I will say it's gorgeous. It looks absolutely. When I say style over substance, the style is almost enough to enjoy watching it. Just on that alone, like the design and the way it's shot and the color and the people that he casts, from everything from the way that he puts them to their look next to each other and the sounds of their voices and
music.
It's almost like, it's almost like an album. Like it's very. It's just, I wish that the dialogue was meatier and drove towards something concrete. And it almost felt like the ending was like, well, I got to give him something here at the end. And like, that's not enough.
To me, he is a filmmaker where it's, studios or producers or whatever can meddle too much.
Yeah.
But I think there are instances where you have, this guy is a visionary filmmaker in terms of the looks of everything. Just the sets in this are just unreal. Yeah. And his, with Mandy, it's the same thing, it's the same kind of look and everything, and it's incredible. But like you've said, it's almost like he needs an editor in there to just be like, okay, let's speed things up a little bit, or we got to have a little bit more
maybe
substance
now
to
in
this.
Streaming, it's different, but at a certain point, if you're having the discussion, it's like, look, it's about pacing, and it's got to be okay that I can't be afraid of letting this feel kind of boring sometimes. And a studio person, again, maybe it's different in streaming, but a studio person usually would say, well, no, it's not. No, it isn't. That's like, we're going to build a roller coaster, and you're like, and then this whole middle section is boring, And then, because we're trying to sell tickets to this, like, and we want people walking out of there being like, that was great.
Yeah.
That doesn't all have to be exciting like a roller coaster, but it has to, from start to finish. And I think an effective movie to which one hopes to sell tickets needs to move, even if it's Sophie's Choice. There's got to be.
And it's very much
say that about Barry Lyndon too. Barry Lyndon is a boring movie, and he gets away with it because he is a genius that invented cameras and shot the whole. There's other things that make that a remarkable movie. But I don't think I've ever sat through Barry Lyndon and not fallen asleep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fallen asleep, literally, like not because I was high, just because it's so slow. And that's
and Mandy is this episode of this show did not feel as slow to me as what Mandy was, because Mandy is, and you very much have a feeling. And this is okay. I don't have a problem with this, where there are things where he's just like, you know what, this would look really cool. And it does. There are things in Mandy that are, you just watch it and you're like, this is one of the coolest. This is just cool. This is one of the coolest things that I've ever seen in a film. And then there are scenes of just like people just looking at each other, and there's zoom, he's slowly going in tighter on just, they're still, and you're just like, it has to move a little bit more than this. I love the cool stuff, but it's just so slow that,
right.
There's slow burns, and then there's just, it's glacial pacing, and
it goes out, right? It's burning too slow. It goes out.
So, but yeah, I would recommend, just in terms of the visuals of this, it's just amazing. But it is, and the creature at the end I thought was great,
Yeah.
So.
And I like how it doesn't explain anything.
Yeah. But definitely watch some of the other episodes, because some are funny and some are very serious, and so none of them that I've seen so far that I think were amazing, but they're all at least, pretty good. So yeah.
Cool.
Okie dokie.
Chris and Chris Talk Movies at gmail.com. That's our handle. We're on the socials. You can you can subscribe, you can leave us a comment or a suggestion or some interesting tidbits that we obviously didn't know. Thank you for joining us. Hope you'll come back next time. Are we going to do Die Hard for next time?
Yeah.
We're going to do
another
Bruce Willis classic.
Christmas movie.
Another Christmas movie. Die Hard, baby. Alan Rickman. So great. If you haven't seen Die Hard, take this as an opportunity to treat yourself.
Just watch Die Hard if you've never seen Die Hard before. One of the greatest action movies ever made.
Yeah,
probably.
It's kind of the original modern action movie in many ways, in my mind. I say that with authority, having no academic authority. For me, I watched it. I was like, whoa, and this breaks the genre. And then everything afterwards is like, it's no Die Hard.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. And that's all for me. Anything else you want to add?
I don't think so.
Okie dokie smoky. Then we will talk to you next week.